Welcome to the video everyone, and today I want to just talk about something which I mentioned in a Substack note, which was that I'd been to court with someone who I've been helping. I didn't represent them, although that was an option made available, but I'll explain the situation, or vaguely and quickly, to let you know what it is that's going on in my own situation and where I need to improve and where there are some strengths. So I've been helping people write particulars of claims and also legal letters to try to help them ensure that any adjustments or help that they need is recognised by the authorities and provided to them. And I charge £50 a letter, and then it's up to them to provide the information, add any additional information to those letters. So with a particular, eventually when you're writing particulars of claim as well, and then a response to the defence, those letters sort of add up possibly to about £1,000 or something like that eventually, because you're writing the first stage complaint, then the second stage complaint, then you're writing the letter before the claim, then you're writing up the particulars of claim, then you're writing the response to the defence and all of those sorts of things. So long as they're adding the information correctly to the particulars of claim, and when I do that, I number the paragraphs as you're supposed to, and then I'll write in brackets, add date, so on, open brackets, add the date, close brackets, the defendant acknowledged my email or something like that. And they're supposed to be adding these dates so that it gives the judge and the defendants a timeline. And I've said to them, you must add these dates. You must go through all of your emails and add these specific dates so as to ensure that you are providing a proper particulars of claim. Otherwise, it will get struck out. Anyway, on this occasion, I had not realised that they had not filled in those brackets at all. So they'd just printed it off as I'd written it without checking it at all. Oh, I felt really disheartened when I got to court, because this is a reason to strike out a claim, obviously, because it makes there's no cohesion to it. It doesn't make sense to anybody. So I did not know that they had not done that. And this is one of the things where I was partnered up with another bloke who was also doing the same. And he asked me to partner up with him, which I did. And then he left and he said, no, I can't be arsed dealing with these people. They're so dumb and stupid. And he stopped doing it in the end. I don't think they're dumb and stupid. I think they're demoralised and probably then distracted, depressed, all those sorts of things. But really, it would have taken an hour to get that sorted, and they should have done it. So I feel really disheartened by that failure, and I've decided not to help people. Not to help people anymore, because I've got to get on with my own stuff, and my own stuff is more important to me, and it's probably more important to a wider amount of people as well, because it's to do with speech, it's to do with partiality within institutions, public sector. So it's probably a lot more impactful than these other small claims which I'm helping to deal with. Plus, I just do not have the time to handhold these people. But with regards to that court case and court hearing, It was an attempt to strike out and for a summary judgment. I'd written out the particulars of claim myself before I'd come across AI, and the judge was satisfied with the particulars of claim, other than the errors made by the claimant. The judge, he did look to me, because I was sat with the claimant, and he assumed correctly that I had written up the particulars of claim. And then I also wrote up later on the skeleton argument, which I used AI to write that. Again, I'd be charging £50 for that, but it was done in, a matter of minutes. That did impress him a lot more than my particulars of claim, because I then handed over the costs of medical assessment over to the defendants, which he had initially agreed with at that point when he read the skeleton argument, and that I would not have known how to do that myself without AI. And what he said about the skeleton argument was that it was incredibly impressive. He knew straight away and assumed correctly that it was written by AI, and he in the end, what he stated was that the particulars of claim needed to be amended due to the errors, and they couldn't actually dismiss it and strike it out, because there was an argument which we were making, which there were there were still legal debates surrounding certain aspects of the claim, and that had not been resolved, so it needed to receive a hearing, and he agreed with that. And he said, okay, well, because this is discrimination and it's particularly about disability, he allowed it to go on with case management, whereby the claimant had a certain date to get things done. They have not even started it, and they've not asked me to start it. I don't know if they've had the case management notes from the defendant yet. I don't know what's going on, but I'm really struggling at this point to handhold them through this. They've had all the work and adjustments necessary that they needed. They can still amend, or I can still amend the particulars of claim and then charge them again for it, because and I'd keep on charging them if they keep on doing this when they've got a responsibility on their own side to get the dates in and go through their evidence. They did mention that they might go to a lawyer, which I've encouraged them to do so, because even if they go to a lawyer, they will still have to go through all of these evidence trails and timelines. This isn't something that you don't just dump your emails onto the solicitor and say sort through it. You've got to go through it beforehand and say this is relevant to here, there, here and here. You've got to timeline it still, and if they just can't be asked doing all of that, then they should just pull back and say, okay, well, you've done everything, and I will not be asking for, compensation for injury to feelings. So that's the court hearing from that perspective. I learned that, because I did a court hearing myself a couple of years ago now, and I hadn't handed in evidence. I didn't realise that evidence would possibly be needed at that stage. And I really sort of panicked during the court case, and then I just ended it. I just said, okay, well, I can't go ahead anymore. And I panicked too early, and I reacted too early. So what I learned from this court hearing that I just had was that I mustn't panic, but certain aspects of where there's still legal issues and debates to be had, then a hearing must be had. So not to worry about, not getting all the information in for that strikeout claim. I've learned how to deal with those situations to ensure that a hearing is had and is possible, and that's been through the help of AI. And there's been some other scenarios which have arisen. I also learned that I'm writing down too much, and because I'm writing so much, like trying to follow what the judge is saying to the defendant's counsel and all of that, I start to get distracted by the writing and not listening to what they're saying. And so I've decided that I'm going to learn shorthand so that I can get that information down quickly. So I've started doing shorthand to aid me through those sorts of situations in my own cases. And I also need to put symbols with that so that I can, where I am writing things down, I can add a symbol to show where I have where contradictions arise, where there's needed cross-examination and things like that, and questions arising at the end when the judge has finished speaking. Then I can hopefully do all of that sort of stuff by using this new shorthand which I'm learning. And I also need to be able to find the confidence to speak up. And I don't think it's a lack of confidence. I think it's a point of confusion where I've trailed off and I've become distracted by my writing. So hopefully the shorthand will rectify that issue that's arisen in that situation. Now, in my own case, I had put Laycock versus Lago, or Lago, and this was a claim where there was a refusal to undergo medical assessment. I've been through medical assessment for my CICA, and that was so disturbing to me because it was a psychologist, and she outright lied in many situations and scenarios within her assessment of me. And that caused me deep upset because there was no, it was myself up against her, a professional. So that was a deciding factor, or a very big factor in me refusing in 2020 to continue with registration of myself in the NHS. So I'm using Laycock versus Lago, or Lago versus Laycock, whichever way it is, to say that I continue to refuse assessment for any medical assessment, and that it would cause me greater psychological harm because the psychologist caused me upset and harm and distress, and so further psychological assessment would cause me further distress as well. And I also added further evidence, medical evidence, my police records, CICA records, all of those sorts of things to the case, to the evidence required by the judge, the district judge, and that's been sent off now. And with that, I am hoping that my claims will be issued, and there's 8 of them on hold waiting for this evidence by the district judge. I showed the body of the letter to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT it's good, but I think it's been updated or something, and it's turned really bad. When I'm typing stuff into it, it sort of responds, "Let me explain this calmly and safely." You don't need to do that, ChatGPT. That's not necessary. Just get to the point. So that's been quite frustrating. And then it seems to get radicalised, because when I showed the main body of the letter from the courts, with the judge saying that evidence was preferred, it didn't say, please, you've got to hand it. It said evidence is preferred or else it gets struck out, which makes sense because I'd made errors on the N244 form, which is a form where you make orders and requests to the judge, and my orders were for to not have to be forced to undergo medical assessment, but I had it signed off by someone else, and that means to the courts that there's mental incapacity. So the court was saying, well, if you're having your N244 form signed off by somebody else, like a litigant friend, then that implies that you can't self-represent, which means it gets struck out, which is why they needed the medical evidence to confirm that I did have mental capacity and I would be able to self-represent myself. And it did say, we believe that you probably are able to self-represent, but we need the evidence to prove that. So my evidence also proves why I do not want medical assessment. So hopefully that will be accepted and go through with my court case. But it's been interesting because I've used AI. So like at the beginning of the year of 2025, I had no idea that I would be bringing claims against the police, against the Home Office, the NPCC, the College of Policing, or judicial reviews. I didn't even really fully understand judicial reviews at that point. So I've been on a very fast sort of retraining, but also learning how to write up the forms and, learning the errors that I've made, where I've made failures. I don't really mind when I make mistakes because I don't see them as failures. I think we all need to make mistakes so that we learn from them and then we can progress. So it's been a massive learning curve. And just the year before, in 2024, I had done this book which I sell on Amazon called The Harvest, and it was mainly about a sort of con artist in the alternative media who was doing all this sort of raising money for claims that they were bringing, kind of loosely based on Tommy Robinson always needing money for a court case and those sorts of things. And it was just becoming so regular that these alternative media people were bringing claims for themselves, really. I guess maybe it does help with perhaps, I mean, these are criminal claims, I think, criminal cases rather than civil cases, because I think civil cases means that there's more implication on the public sector if a civil claim is won. And so I started following alternative media in 2012, and there was, it talks, and I think the talking is important. I think these discussions are so important, regardless of how people feel about things. The discussions are necessary. But I've been watching it since 2012, so I've been watching and following alternative media have these discussions, stress how concerned they are but they don't go anywhere beyond talking. So obviously this is a business model for most of the alternative media, especially the large channels who have like, about 10,000 or more people following them, then they are probably making quite a bit of money from it. So I think it serves them well to stay stagnant and just talking about these situations rather than bringing any claims through the courts. One of the wonderful things which I've come across, and there are some other channels who do bring claims. I know that the Miller versus College of Policing, I think that was 2020. I think that appeal was supported by Free Speech Union, and what I've noticed is that the Smith versus Chief Constable of Northumbria Police in 2025, that was about the Pride parades, that too was supported by Free Speech Union. Anyway, I do recognise that, I think his name's Toby Young, he does appear to be working on legal strategies like an NGO, because I think the thing is, with alternative media, they're talking about the issues, they're talking about what is coming, but unlike the NGOs, they're just not stopping it. They're not bringing any kind of hurdles through the courts. They're just talking about it, and I see that as working only so far, but then you have to act on what you know. And so I do really appreciate those sorts of people who are bringing claims or supporting those people who bring claims and those sorts of things. But I think it's important and about time now that the alternative media do start bringing judicial reviews and do start acting like NGOs do, and start having I don't think that this is going to be resolved through politics at all. I think that it needs to be done through the law. And if you look at what's happened with Smith versus Northumbria Police in 2025, she brought that claim and she said, that is partiality. Police taking part in a pride parade is partiality. And that stopped. It immediately stopped afterwards. And you think about it, beforehand, they had police on their hands and knees doing, BLM protests and things like that. I'm quite confident, but I'm going to struggle with the talking and the legalese and all of that. That's way over my head right now, so I've got to do a lot of reading and a lot of researching. I've got to sort of focus on interviews, muting, things like that, because and shorthand, because I'm certainly out of my depth right now, and I need to sort of train myself up to become focused and able to do those sorts of things like the hearing. But I've got to say, when I went to that hearing, they were all really reasonable. I was, and that's always been my experience, if I'm honest. Every single hearing, the ones with the CICA, the personal one which I brought and abandoned too early, they were all really reasonable people, and I think that needs to be remembered. So I'm not concerned about any kind of, I'm not concerned about corruption necessarily within the courts. I think that they'll hear what I have to say. I'll just stick to my guns saying, well, there's legal issues which have not been resolved. There needs to be debate. There needs to be a hearing so that the legal understanding is clear. And right now it's not. and that's what I'll have to stick to. But overall, it's been quite eye-opening because of the AI aspect. Because that's been, like I said, I was not expecting to be bringing claims against all these people. And my book in 2024, that was about someone from alternative media bringing claims, raising endless money to fight the authorities, and always sort of claiming, well, courts are a slow process, and that is true. It's a very slow process in the UK. But discovering AI and last year, and even starting the claims, claims I was not expecting to do. So I was not expecting to discover AI to use in respect to bringing court cases either. And the only reason why I brought the claims was because I kept seeing that the police were acting politically, and they were the actual issue which I was bringing a legal case against was that they were training up their staff on white privilege and white fragility, which I think is racism. And I wanted to bring up a claim, a discrimination claim for disability, because they are very much aware that these victims, like the grooming gangs and illegal migrant rape victims, they know that we exist, and yet they're saying these sorts of things regardless, which I think is absolutely insulting and offensive. If we're going to have, I've always said it in the comments of videos which I follow, if they are going to insist on hate laws and hate speech laws and speech laws, then we'll have to use those speech laws against them, because they should be held at a higher standard than the voting commoner. We live in a democracy. We're allowed to debate politics, and so we should have the freedom to discuss the matter, but they are meant to be impartial, and they must not start bringing about punishments to people who do talk about politics. They aren't allowed to, and maybe in their private life they might be able to. I don't know. I don't know how far their speech, free speech is allowed with regards to public sector workers. But I'm just saying that they, as a institution, they are not allowed to get involved in politics. They're not allowed to express partiality. That's their role. And so when they do, I feel that the right thing to do is bring a claim against them, especially when it's offensive to victims of migrant rape and grooming gang victims. How on earth can they get away with calling us white fragility, for goodness sakes? They're claiming that that's because of colonialism, and that really is black fragility is true and whatnot. I don't know, but I mean, it's absurd. So I do believe that these claims do need to be brought to correct the situation, so that once again the institutions are impartial and the common person, the citizen, is allowed to speak freely about politics. So I feel that the only way to do this now is through the legal system, through the courts process, and that's why I'm doing this. Or otherwise we're going to be sliding down into this dictatorship of speech, where they authorize what we can and cannot say when they don't have that authority over us. So that's what I'm doing, and I did not expect to be doing it this year. I am a Christian and I do pray to God, and after my CICA claim where I self-represented my rape case and rape compensation claim, I did say to God, you know, but I'm absolutely exhausted after this. Can I have some rest, and then I will get back to helping on these sorts of issues, the legal issues, when you see fit. So obviously, if you believe in God, and I do, then this was all raised. I'd had my rest and I was put back to work again, I guess. So I've been working on these sorts of things this year. I have learnt so much. I've learnt so much through the use of AI. I have learnt so much on my own as well. I've discovered on my own loads of legislation which I can use, loads of case law which I can use. And initially when I started using AI, it doesn't recognize it sort of applies the precedent setting case law, which is correct. You're meant to do that, but also that's been developed on since then. So some arises since 1977, and you know, then 20 years later it's been worked on and it's applied a little bit differently, and then, you know, another 20 or 50 years later it's being tested again. So you've got to keep your eye out on case law which the AI gives you, but fundamentally it gives you the correct sort of precedent, and then you've got to be aware of how that's being worked on. And so I think from my perspective, I've been focusing solely on law. I know that certain things have been going on over Christmas and the New Year. I think Venezuela's popped up in my feed quite a bit. I don't know all of this stuff, and I follow this guy called, what's his name? That guy, Scott Webb, and he was on Odyssey as well, but he's deleted that channel. It wasn't really working for him, but he's really hammered. He's clearly very much censored. I like his stuff, and he's always talking about something which I agree with, is that even in the alternative media, what the people are looking for is entertainment. And you know, we're in a swipe and click environment right now, so everything's quick fed to people, and so law is incredibly dull, slow and boring by comparison to what is going on in the news. The news is basically entertainment for people, and then they get to pick a side and feel moral for picking their side and whatnot. And there's more than just two sides, of course. So I've been avoiding all of that sort of stuff for years now. Probably after around about 2022, I stopped following alternative media to a great degree, because I just was finding all of the news reports to be distracting, and I wanted to focus in on the UK only. And I was particularly interested in 2022 around legal issues, and that was mainly to do with lockdown and all those sorts of things which were happening previously. And I was interested to see that in that period of time that there was a lot of you know, people saying, well, let's not follow the rules and all of that and acquiesce, and I agree with that, but very few were actually bringing claims. And when there was a Dr. White, Sam White, and he lost his job, partnership in a GP surgery, and he then went on to bring a legal battle, and I thought that was incredible. And it was a very slow process again, but he's sort of, he was rallied by alternative media but then dropped, and I find that that's what alternative media does. It sort of rallies people and ditches them when it's no longer relevant, and I find that they remind me of the mainstream media a lot. So I feel that I've sort of turned away from the alternative media. I think a lot of people are questioning alternative media as well. I'm thinking that they will fall and crash quicker than perhaps even the mainstream media has done. So I'm sort of avoiding much of the noise which is going on in alternative media and international politics and all of that. And I am focusing very much in the UK and in home and legal issues, and that's what I'm focusing on right now. And I am really tired because I've been working my head down and writing up exhibits and showing why they are needed and all of that sort of stuff, and it's very exhausting, especially because it's so personal as well. This is regarding my own rape and regarding my own health and regarding discrimination which I feel is against me personally by a political police and a political NHS and political charities. So I'm bringing lots of claims about discrimination, about partiality within the different sectors, including charities as well. And I'm discovering that so many cases so much case law is being tested right now, which is so relevant to me. So I am actually finding all of this really exciting and entertaining from a very different perspective to, the news that's going on. So I don't really expect my channel to grow at all, really, because I don't follow the entertainment. I don't follow the international geopolitics and all of that. So law is slow, it's boring, and I'm bringing claims, which means that I'm sort of focused in a different direction to bring it, writing up any kind of essays or articles. I think what I'm going to have to focus on as well is doing videos, because I'm going to have to find ways to improve my communication, my verbal communication, because I think that could be worked on to help me with my court cases. So there's a few things which I'm getting on with. I know where I need to direct my energy and everything, and I know what I need to improve on. I know how I want to improve on it, and I just need to remain focused on that and not follow the noise. So that's what I'm doing. I think that I'll do pretty well, and I will keep updating with videos, I think, at this point, because the articles, I may do some articles, but I may not do. I'll have to see. But yeah, things have started kicking off with the courts now and issuing of claims. One has already been issued, so we'll have to see how it all goes. I'll leave it there because I've taken up too much of your time. Thank you very much for your time, and all the best. I'm looking forward to all of us having a good 2026, and I hope that it leads us in the direction that we want it to go in, rather than what is being directed for us. I hope we overcome this, and I hope we can do it in a better way than just following all the entertainment, but we'll see what happens. So I'll leave it there. Thank you very much. Bye.